What if I told you that for 4 years, I paid for the roof over my parents' heads, and they still called me a burden? I'm Lindsay. I built my life from the ground up in silence, while my family tore it down behind my back. This isn't a story about revenge. It's a story about the moment silence ended, and how truth, when finally spoken, can burn louder than any scream. Let me show you what happened. The day my uncle sent me that video, when my phone buzzed with a message from Uncle Jason, I had no idea it would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. Lindsay, you need to see this. There was a video attached. I watched it once, then again, and again, in the shaky frame. My parents and my brother Thomas were sitting around our old kitchen table in Phoenix, sunlight pouring through the window, like some warm lie. They didn't know they were being recorded, but their words were sharp, clear, unmistakable. Lindsay only helps because she owes us. My mother's voice, full of scorn. Yeah, Thomas snorted. She acts like she's doing us a favor. What a joke. And my father, the man who once held my bike steady when I first learned to ride, just nodded silently, agreeing. I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. There was just stillness. For 4 years, I had been the ghost keeping their lives together. Through my company, Divine Investments, LLC, I'd been paying the majority of their mortgage. They thought they were sending checks to a faceless bank, never bothering to read the fine print, never asking questions. They believed I was helping a little. I was helping a lot. Over $200. Ling. Quietly. Faithfully. While they called me a burden. While they laughed behind my back. That night, as the fourth replay ended, I looked at the mortgage documents. And I remembered something Kate, my financial advisor, once said. Let's include a purchase option clause. Just in case. At the time, I thought it was just good planning. Now I knew it was the key. The next payment was due in 2 weeks. For the first time, I wouldn't be saving them. I'd be setting myself free. And before we go on, if you're listening to this story wherever you are, maybe take a moment and share it with Silent Revenge. Just a comment, tell us where you're tuning in from, or how this beginning made you feel. This space was made for stories like this. And every little share, every quiet subscription, is a way of saying, hey, I hear you. Me too. Thank you for being here. Let's keep going. I sat alone in my home office, the silence wrapping around me like a second skin. My fingers moved over the keyboard with a steady calm, almost mechanical, as if grief had short-circuited the part of me that should have been furious. There it was, row after row of cold, impartial numbers. Every payment, every transaction, every dollar. For 4 years, I had been making payments on their mortgage through Divine Investments, the LLC I created with Kate's help. They had no idea. Every month, they thought they were sending money to a faceless lender. They never noticed the documents I had carefully structured to obscure my ownership. They never cared to read the terms. I had paid attention, so they didn't have to. Their portion, just a small fraction. The rest, quietly, constantly. Me. Over $200,000. $200,000. I stared at the number on the screen, letting it sink in. The amount wasn't what stunned me. It was the weight of those numbers. The truth they carried. It wasn't just money. It was time. It was trust. It was years of swallowing their dismissal, convincing myself that family was more important than pride, that doing right by them somehow made me a better person. But watching that video had torn off whatever blindfold I'd been wearing. The words kept echoing like a bad radio signal I couldn't shut off. She owes us the least she can do. She acts like she's doing us a favor. Favor. What a word. As if I had done something petty and optional. I opened the mortgage agreement. Scrolling to the part I hadn't thought about in months, The purchase option clause. Kate had fought to include it, insisting that we cover all angles. Just in case. Lindsay, you never know what people are like when money's involved. At the time, I'd laughed, told her it wasn't necessary, that my family would never turn on me like that. I wasn't laughing now. The next payment was due in exactly 2 weeks. It was marked on my calendar like every other month, but this time, it meant something else. A quiet, irreversible fork in the road. They would send in their usual contribution. A few $100s, like always. But I wouldn't be covering the rest this time. I wouldn't fix the shortfall. I wouldn't erase the difference to keep their worlds spinning like nothing had changed. Let the system do what it was designed to do. Let the contract breathe. Let the mask fall. The thing they never realized, the irony they never grasped, was that the burden they pitied was the very foundation holding their life up. They had no idea that I wasn't just helping. I was the bank. I was the owner. And in 2 weeks, the house would remember that truth even if they never did. They say hindsight is 20/20ths, but even in the present, some truths glare so brightly it hurts to look away. 4 years ago, Phoenix was on the verge of collapse. The housing market crashed. And my parents were teetering on the edge of losing their home, the same house I grew up in. The same hallway, where my name was once taped in crayon on the door. They were drowning in overdue payments and pride. And I, at 27, was already managing a team of engineers, leading product development at a successful software company, a career I'd built piece by piece. Without applause. They never approved of what I did. Software isn't a real career for a woman. My mother once said, her mouth tight with judgment, "Your brother's the one with real business sense." She'd add with the air of someone reciting a family truth, "Thomas, the golden child. He was the one they believed in. The heir? The pride?" Yet, in less than 2 years of running my father's company, he'd nearly driven it into the ground. Still, when the mortgage came due, they came to me. Not directly, no. That would require humility. Instead, it was my father who dropped hints during dinner. My mother who left bank notices accidentally on the kitchen counter. Thomas who mentioned how tight things were at the office. I didn't hesitate. I still loved them then. Or maybe I just hadn't learned what love shouldn't cost. So I talked to Kate, my financial advisor. I told her everything. And she suggested something that would protect me while helping them. Create an LLC. She said, buy the house through it. Restructure the mortgage. And let them think they're paying the bank. This way, you stay legally covered. And they keep their pride. It sounded brilliant. Clean. Dignified. They'd never have to know I saved them. And I wouldn't have to feel their reluctance when I handed over money. Divine Investments LLC was born. And with it, I became a ghost benefactor. Every month, their small payments would trickle in, and I would quietly make up the difference. No questions asked. No credit claimed. My name was never on the statements. Only the company's. They stayed in their home. I stayed in the shadows. The only person who knew was Uncle Jason. He'd overheard a conversation between Kate and me during a holiday dinner. He cornered me in the kitchen afterward, lowering his voice like someone about to tell a secret. "You're too good to them. Lindsay," he said softly, "they don't deserve you." I defended them. I always did. They're family. I said, they don't have to understand what I do to love me. But now, watching that video again, listening to their laughter, their words like rust on old wounds, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. She owes us. The least she can do. What a joke. Each phrase hit like a strike of thunder in a sky I'd always tried to keep clear. I had kept their roof intact. They had torn mine down with their mouths. I opened my laptop and logged into Divine Investments again. 2 weeks. 1 payment. That was all it would take. And this time, I wouldn't be invisible. I didn't think anything could hit harder than that video. I was wrong. The very next day, Uncle Jason sent me screenshots grainy, painfully real of a group chat I hadn't known existed. It was called Family Finances, a private group, created 6 months ago. Without me, and the messages made that video feel like a whisper. Lindsay thinks she's so special with her tech job. Thomas had teeped, the tone practically oozing disdain. She barely helps with the mortgage. He continued. While I'm here every day running Dad's business? Running it into the ground. More like. But it was my mother's message that sent something cold slithering through my spine. We should ask her for more money. She's single. No kids. What else does she spend it on? After all, we sacrificed to raise her. She can't even support her family properly. I sat there. Phone in hand. The words burning into my eyes. I don't remember breathing. I just remember the heat in my chest and the taste of metal behind my teeth. These weren't strangers. These were my people. My blood. And they talked about me like I was some bank with a personality problem. I opened my laptop again this time with trembling hands and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd been updating for years. Payment by payment. Date by date. Line after line of meticulous numbers. The only language they never cared to learn. In total, I had paid exactly $267,843 through Divine Investments, and them $52,500. Over 4 years, they had been transferring roughly $1,100 a month, a respectable number for a regular household. But the actual mortgage, it was over $6,500 each month. The difference over $5,400 came from me, quietly, steadily. They never noticed. They never asked. And now they mocked me for not doing enough. My phone buzzed as if on cue. Mom, sweetie. Can you come to dinner this Sunday? We need to talk about something important. Of course they did. The message felt staged. Sweet. Polite, sugar-coated poison. I didn't need to guess what the important topic was. They were planning to ask for more money. More than the thousands they didn't know I was already giving. Dinner. I thought, would be a performance? And this time, I wouldn't play my usual role. Dinner on Sunday felt like walking into a play where everyone knew their lines, except I was the only one who realized it was all pretend. I arrived at exactly 6:00 p.m. The Phoenix sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the yard. The house, technically, my house, looked just as it always had. But everything about it now felt like a set. I could smell my mother's lasagna before I even reached the door. Of course she made that. My favorite. A manipulative classic. Lindsay. Sweetheart, she beamed, pulling me into a hug that was just a little too tight. Her bracelet sparkled in the light new. Expensive, a silent clue that they hadn't prioritized the upcoming mortgage payment. Thomas was already at the table. Perfectly pressed shirt. Smug smirk included. Hey sis. Nice of you to finally make time for your family. I smiled. If only he knew that his pressed shirts, his smug little life, all of it was built on my silent generosity. I always have time for family, I said smoothly. Swallowing the irony, my father emerged from his study, holding a stack of papers I recognized instantly as bank statements. They were practicing their lines. I almost applauded. We sat down. The lasagna was served. The table was quiet for just long enough to be suspicious. Then my mother broke the silence. Before we eat, sweetheart, there's something important we'd like to talk about. Here it comes. Of course, I said, serving myself a neat portion. What's on your mind? Thomas cleared his throat, taking on that patronizing tone he always used when pretending to be the responsible one. You know, Dad's business hasn't been doing so well lately. The market's been rough. I took a bite, chewing slowly. The Phoenix market had never been better unless your name was Thomas. My mother reached across the table, touching my hand just enough to signal maternal warmth. We're so proud of how successful you've become. Your father and I gave up so much to give you that chance. Yes. The sacrifice speech. Then came the real reason. The mortgage has become quite a burden, my father added. His voice dipped in that father-knows-best tone he used to use when I was a child. And since you're doing so well in your computer work, software development, I corrected softly. Not that they ever cared to understand the difference. Yes. Yes. Of course. He waved it off. We thought maybe you could help a little more. It's your family home too. After all, I knew the number before they even said it. We're only asking for an extra $2,000 a month. My mother added quickly, as if speed could soften greed. That's not much for someone with your salary. I took another bite of lasagna. It tasted the same, but everything had changed. 2,000 more. On top of the 5,000, they didn't know I was already paying. I'll think about it, I said. Voice neutrale. Times are a bit uncertain right now. Thomas scoffed. Please. We all know you're doing fine. Unlike some of us who are actually working to keep the family legacy alive, I smiled again. This time, with purpose. You're right. Thomas, I said calmly. Sometimes. We do get exactly what we deserve. After dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom. But first, I made it a tour, past the half-open door of my father's study, and the whispers waiting inside. Maybe you're listening on your way home, or during a quiet night alone. Wherever you are, if something in this story stirred something in you, we'd love to hear it. Just drop a line in the comments below. Here at Silent Revenge, every word shared is another quiet reminder that stories connect us even in silence. And if this felt meaningful to you, a soft little tap on that subscribe button is enough to say, let's meet here again. Next story. Because this dinner isn't over yet, and the whispers behind that door, they're just the beginning of what comes next. The door to my father's study was slightly ajar. I didn't mean to linger, but I didn't walk away either. The voices were hushed. Urgent. Laced with frustration and something darker. She's not going to help. Thomas snapped. Did you see the way she just sat there acting like she's above us with all that tech money patience? My father replied. Voice low and methodical. We still have another option. My heart thudded. Remember those files I found on her cloud when she used our Wi-Fi last month? My blood turned to ice. They had snooped. The last time I visited, I'd connected to their home network. My cloud had auto-synced, and they had accessed my private files. My financial documents. She's hiding money. My father continued. Some company called Divine Investments. I looked it up. It's an LLC. Legit. And it's doing very well. My mother's voice chimed in. Cold and hard. She's been squirreling money away instead of helping us. I raised a snake. Snake. The word hit me like a slap. We'll give her one more chance, she added. If she still refuses, I'll remind her of that little incident back in college when she used Thomas's business account to pay tuition. She thinks we don't know. But we do. We have proof. I nearly laughed out loud. That incident, I had used the account with my father's permission when their own check bounced. And I'd paid it back in full. With interest. In under a month, I still had the emails. So this was the planned blackmail. And if that doesn't work, Thomas muttered, we could always contact her company. HR or something. Raise questions about her mental stability. Maybe suggest she's been misusing company resources. That'd get her attention. And there it was. Not just manipulation. Destruction. They were planning to ruin my name. My work. My livelihood if I didn't give them more money. The people who shared my DNA had turned me into a target. A threat to be neutralized. A vault to be cracked. I stepped away from the door before I was seen. Walked into the bathroom like nothing had happened. I turned on the water, flushed the toilet, washed my hands. My reflection in the mirror stared back with unsettling calm. I returned to the dining room. They were already seated, pretending nothing had happened. I joined them, just as practiced. My mother smiled sweetly. So, Lindsay, have you had time to think about what we discussed about helping a little more with the mortgage? I looked her in the eye. Actually, I have, and you're right. Family should help family. I paused just long enough. I'll have an answer for you. In 8 days. 8. Not random. Their mortgage payment was due in exactly 8 days. Thomas frowned. Why so specific? I rose, gently gathering my purse. Just need to check some things with my financial advisor. You understand. Right. Being careful with money is just good business sense? I looked right at Thomas when I said it. My mother walked me to the door, wrapping me in another carefully calculated hug. We knew you'd understand. Sweetheart, family always comes first. I returned her embrace with the softest of smiles. Yes. And family always gets exactly what they deserve. When I got home that night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I made tea. Then I called Kate. I need to go over the purchase clause again. I said. No, emotion in my voice. She didn't ask why. She already knew. I had a feeling you might, she said softly. Remember, if they miss a payment? Divine Investments can execute the purchase option immediately. The house would transfer into your full ownership, legally, cleanly. And then I asked, then they become tenants, month to month. If they miss rent, Arizona law applies. You can serve a standard eviction notice. I nodded, staring out the window into the darkness. Are you sure you want to do this? Lindsay, that question. It wasn't about law. It was about guilt. About blood. About whether the years of duty and silence still meant anything after everything I'd heard behind that door. I thought about my mother's words, snake, and my father, talking about accessing my private files like he had every right. I thought about Thomas, planning to sabotage my career just because his own life was sinking. Yes. I said, I'm sure. But I wasn't going to warn them. No confrontation. No grand declaration. Just silence. Let them think I was still the dependable daughter. Still, the one who could be coaxed with guilt and lasagna. Let them believe the mask they always projected onto me until the system did what it was built to do. The next mortgage payment was due in 13 days. For the first time, I wasn't going to be there to catch the fall. I sent a reply to my mother's text, the one inviting me to dinner. Of course. Mom. Looking forward to it. The heart emoji felt absurd, but sometimes you use their own language to end the conversation. Sometimes revenge starts with a smile. The text began the very next morning. Hi, sweetie. Just checking in. Dad's feeling a bit stressed about the house stuff. Maybe we could all chat soon. It was wrapped in concern. But I could already hear the undertone. A slow, steady drumbeat of guilt. The next message came from Thomas. Of course. Hey sis. Was talking to a buddy in tech recruitment? Some big layoffs coming in your industry? Must be scary. Huh. Good thing you've got family. And there it was. The thinly veiled threat, tucked beneath false empathy. These weren't random. They were tactical. Short messages. Scattered across days. Sent to keep me off balance. Like emotional snipers. Gentle in tone. Loaded in implication. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded them all to Kate. We met for coffee that Friday. They're trying to box you in emotionally, she said, reading the messages with a frown. Make you feel unstable. Worried. It's classic pressure tactics dressed up in family language. I nodded, sipping quietly. Let them keep talking. I murmured. Every word just helps me build the case. Kate slid a folder across the table. Inside was every document I would need the legal groundwork for when the payment failed. The activation of the purchase clause, the eviction notices. Pre-drafted and ready. I've reviewed everything twice, she said. Their signatures are binding. The ownership transfer will be clean. They can't fight this. What about retaliation, I asked. You saw what they said about going to my HR. Kate looked me in the eye. Then you document first, she said firmly. Get ahead of it. We'll send your HR a full report, the threats. The evidence? The context. If they try anything, you'll already be protected. She was right. I'd worked too hard to build my name to let it fall into their hands. That evening, I sat down and started drafting the email. I included everything, screenshots of the group chat, the transcript of the conversation I overheard, the text messages, Jason's original video, every puzzle piece, laid out in clear, factual language. No drama, just truth. When I finished, I saved the draft. Not sent. Not yet. But ready? They wanted a war. They had no idea how well I planned. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from the bank. They had attempted the payment, and it bounced. Overdrawn. I stared at the notification for a few seconds, then forwarded it to Kate. Here we go, she replied. Want me to start proceedings? I didn't reply immediately. I leaned back in my chair, letting the weight of that moment settle into my chest like a stone at the bottom of a river. They had failed to pay, just as expected. And now, the machine I had built quietly, carefully, legally was ready to do what it was designed to do. But I didn't want to rush. Not yet. Wait. I typed back to Kate. Let it fail officially. Let the clock tick down. Why, she asked. Because, I wrote. Timing is everything. I want them to spend the next 2 days thinking everything is fine. Let them sleep easy. Let them think I'm still going to catch them. It was cruel, but it was also justice. For every time I'd bailed them out without thanks. For every time they'd smiled to my face while stabbing at my back. For the emails, the chat logs, the video. For the daughter, they'd called a burden. This time, I wouldn't throw the rope. I'd let them fall. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up the email draft to HR. I added one more screenshot, the bounced payment notification. Then I saved it again. Still unsent. Still waiting. But closer. So much closer. The deadline passed at exactly 9:00 a.m. I watched the minute change on the clock. And just like that Divine Investments automated system sent out its default notice, 12 minutes later, my phone rang. Lindsay? My mother's voice. Breathless and frantic. Something's wrong with the mortgage. The bank says we defaulted. That can't be right. We need you to help us right now. I paused. Let the silence stretch just enough. Actually, I said calmly, Divine Investments isn't a bank. A beat of silence. It's an LLC. My LLC. To be specific, silence turned to static. What she whispered. Check your email. I continued. You'll find a formal notice. Since you defaulted on your payment, Divine Investments is executing its purchase clause. The house is now legally mine. You are now month-to-month tenants. The gasp that followed sounded like someone had been slapped. This is a joke. My mother stammered. We're your parents, how could you? No joke. I cut in. I've been covering your mortgage for 4 years quietly while you all laughed behind my back. Called me a burden. Planned to blackmail me. Threatened my career. How did you, Uncle Jason? I said simply, he showed me the video. The chat messages. Everything. For a second. Nothing. Then I heard my father's voice. They had put me on speaker. You ungrateful little careful. I interrupted. Is that how you talk to your landlord's silence? You'll receive a rental agreement in the next few days. First rent is due in 30. I suggest you start looking for another place to live. You can't do this, Thomas's voice barked. I already have, I said. And if I need to, I'll serve the eviction notice early. I ended the call. Then I blocked their numbers. Almost immediately, my inbox lit up with messages, extended family. Distant cousin. Family friends I hadn't heard from in years. How could you do this? Family should forgive. You're being heartless. I deleted them all. I wasn't being heartless. I was just finally being done. Some debts can't be repaid with apologies. And some boundaries can only be built with silence. I didn't expect silency. And I didn't get it. Within hours, the backlash began. Emails, voicemails, social media messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone suddenly had an opinion. Family is sacred. How could you evict your own parents? This isn't forgiveness. It's revenge. Yes, it was, but not the kind they thought. I wasn't trying to destroy them. I was simply done being destroyed by them. Every message, every guilt-soaked accusation. I deleted. No replies. No explanations. Just quiet. Final refusal. 3 days after the call, Thomas made his move. I contacted my company's HR department, filed a complaint, claimed I had emotional instability, accused me of using company time for personal projects. It would have been laughable if it weren't so expected. But I was already ahead of him. The report I had drafted with documentation from Kate and Uncle Jason had been sent the night before. Screenshots, timelines, proof of manipulation. HR responded within hours. My work record was impeccable. No red flags. No investigation needed. But Thomas's report, they took that seriously. He wasn't an employee. But his submission had triggered a cross-check. And that led to a deeper look into his professional conduct. I wasn't the only one he'd tried to sabotage. A formal complaint was filed with the real estate board. His license was suspended pending an ethics review. Turns out, weaponizing fake concerns about someone's mental health to damage their career? That's a serious violation. The dominoes kept falling. My mother made one last attempt to reach me. A voicemail. Tearful. Breathy. Dramatic. How could you do this to your own family? We gave you everything. Everything. They gave me silence when I needed support. They gave me judgment when I chose a different path. They gave me obligation when I needed freedom. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. 3 months later, I stood alone in the empty house. The floors echoed under my feet. They had moved out the week before after exhausting every option. Threats. Guilt trips. Even a half-hearted legal challenge. But none of it stuck. The documents were airtight. The ownership was clear, and their grip was gone. I ran my fingers along the kitchen counter. Where it all began, that video. The kitchen table. The voices calling me a burden. Now there was only silence. Clean. Honest silence. Thomas's attempt to sabotage my career had backfired spectacularly. Not only had his complaint been dismissed, but his own ethics review had gained traction. It had since lost clients and credibility. My mother's last voicemail still sat in my archive. Unheard. I kept it there, not out of sentiment, but as a quiet reminder of who they chose to be and of who I chose to become. Uncle Jason and his wife arrived just after noon. We packed up the last few things. He brought coffee. She brought her calm. You okay? Jason asked gently. I paused, looking around one last time. Yeah, I said. I think I am. We talked about the foundation. The one I was setting up using part of the proceeds from the house sale, a place to support people who had been financially manipulated by family. People like me? Because I wasn't alone. Not really. My phone buzzed. A message from Kate. They finally signed the last papers. It's officially over. I smiled. Then exhaled. It wasn't relief. Exactly. It was something quieter. The kind of peace that comes not from proving them wrong, but from no longer needing to. They had always said, family comes first. But they never told me. I get to choose who that family is. And this time, I chose myself. Sometimes, the people we once called home become the very reason we build our own. Lindsay didn't fight back with fire. She fought back with clarity, with silence, and with boundaries that said this far and no further. Because true closure doesn't always come with apology. Sometimes, it comes when you choose peace over being right. If this story made you pause or feel something you haven't quite put into words, just leave a small comment. Let Silent Revenge know you're here, listening in the quiet with the rest of us. And if you'd like more stories like this, a soft tap on subscribe or like is enough to bring us back together for the next one.